It all started when I was in my second year of high school. I had been sick for about 8 months. I would throw up every day and I started to lose weight really fast and to throw up blood. Well, one night when I was asleep, I felt something or someone in my room. I was like awakened by it. It was around midnight and I looked up. I saw a person in front of my closet door. He was wearing a black robe. It looked like a male, but I wasn't sure. He also had red eyes. That was what really scared me the most. He just kept on looking at me, and I felt like he was a really bad person. I remember trying to move, and I wasn't able to. When I closed my eyes and opened them again, he was gone. I know he was there to take me because I felt it when he was looking at me. Within that week, I was told by the doctors that I only had 1 week to live because I had a parasite in me. That's when it all hit me. The man I saw in my room was actually going to take me to the afterlife. Luckily, I was saved, but I'm still able to see him when I get really sick, which happens sometimes. This all happened to me in my second year of high school. Now I'm going to graduate. I lived in this house for about 9 years. I never had anything paranormal happen to me until we tried to fix the house up. And it just happened to start soon after my mother died. My husband and I would be sitting watching TV, and my soda can would turn and move from the edge of the table. Now, this was one of my mom's pet peeves. My 11-year-old daughter tells me Grandma likes to talk to her sometimes. She has no fear at all. She and I are very open to paranormal stuff. So at night when I go to bed, I can hear lots of people talking, but it's so faint. It sounds like people talking from far, far away, but it's inside my house. Once I woke up and I heard, "Uh-oh," then giggling. Once I woke up, on the wall next to me I saw a shadow. And as I sat up, it kind of fell into a ball, and it was gone. My husband was a skeptic, till he kept seeing shadows moving in the hallway. And we hear about cabinets in the kitchen open and close. We also feel our bed shake. It's pretty crazy. My husband is freaked out, but me and my daughter don't really mind. Until they started getting mean, we were fine. I seem to think one may be my mom. She was really into paranormal stuff, and she just keeps saying, "Hi, I'm here." Before moving to United Kingdom in London, I lived in a small Eastern European country, which had fair share of violence, war, and misery in its history. Ever since I was young, I lived with my cousin and grandmother. Because of work-related circumstances, my mom was abroad. We have moved a lot when I was young. I lived a peaceful life as long as I could remember. At least until we moved to the suburbs, a few miles from a small city. We lived on a farm, secluded with at least a mile until the nearest houses. As the farm was very large, We had around 4 dogs at the time, which were always outside. Around 800 meters from our house, there was a very big, old, abandoned barn, which I recently found out that around 50 to 60 years ago had a family living there. The husband hung himself after shooting his wife and kids for no apparent reason. Ever since, anyone who walks past the house can tell that they feel like they're being watched and followed the whole time. Me and my cousin went to kindergarten school for a few years, meaning we had to pass the house every single day. To this day, I remember how scary it was to pass that abandoned house. Even though at the time, we didn't know its history, only that no one lived there for a very long time. One night, as I was getting ready to sleep, the moon was very bright with a clear blue sky. I stared through the window from which I could see the old house. To my surprise, at the very top, from this tiny window, there was some kind of, it was candlelight. I got scared and no one was living there, and the house itself was old and scary for me and my cousin at the time. Actually, frankly, to any farmer around. So that night, I went to sleep. As a couple more nights passed, I was laying in my bed and couldn't fall asleep, just staring through my window in my bed. It was bright as the moon was full. To this day, I cannot explain what happened that night and what I saw. While staring through my window, I saw 3 dark figures, like a hunchback, were leaning forward quite a lot, not walking, but floating past my window. You can tell when someone is walking as from their movement, but this was literally floating past my window. And the scariest part, not only we lived miles from other farmers, it was late at night, but that we had 4 dogs outside who not barked even once. I got stone cold and my heart dropped as I hid under the covers. I was scared to see that again, so I haven't looked through my window for weeks. After what happened, I told my grandmother and mom years later. Both of them believed me, and only then, my grandmother told me what happened at that barn. I will never forget. It stuck deep inside. At the time, I was 8 to 9 years old, but this is the most memorable thing from my childhood. I live in a very friendly neighborhood where people of many cultures and religions get along as though we are brothers and sisters. I had many friends I would play with all day, and my mother was fine with all of them except one whose name was Serena. My mother would tell me to go play with her as much as I like outside, but to never go inside of her house because her mother had a scary ghost in her. I was only 8 at the time, so that was my mother's way of telling me that her mother was possessed. My other friends' mothers would also tell me to keep away from Serena's house. Out of fear of what would happen if we went inside, we all just kept away. However, one day, Serena's mother came out and invited us all inside for ice cream. She very rarely ever left the house, so we were a bit shocked to see her. I remember what my mom always told me and rejected her invitation, but she kept asking. She seemed friendly. We all wanted ice cream, so we decided to go in for a while. There were about 5 of us, including Serena, who looked a bit worried when her mother invited us in. We went inside and sat down at the kitchen table while Serena's mother put ice cream in bowls for us. Everything seemed to be going well until one of my big mouth friends said something about a ghost being inside Serena's mother. Serena's mother's face immediately became angry. When she spoke, her voice was different. She demanded to know what my friend had said, as if she hadn't heard her clearly. Then she let out a screech. It was very frightening and sounded like the screech of a witch. She then fell to her knees, and her legs went into this weird position, as though they were broken. Serena started crying, and so did her mother. Serena's father ran in and lifted his wife off the floor in order to straighten her legs, and then he held her on his arms until she calmed down. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. My friend ran to answer and saw her mother and my mother standing there. I ran and hugged my mother and cried. My mother made sure all my friends got home safely, and then took me home and shouted at me for going inside Serena's house. For a few weeks, I shared a bed with my parents, and frightened my brother into sharing a bed with him, and telling him what had happened. After that, I avoided Serena, even though what happened wasn't really her fault. Serena still lives here, 15 years later. I say hello to her, but I'm not as close to her as I used to be. I think Serena's father is a great man, because he has managed to stick by his wife, even though she's possessed, and he is a great father to Serena as well. I hardly ever see Serena's mother, but when I do, I walk the other way, because I'm still frightened of her 15 years later. Okay, this happened to me on October 1st, 2011. On October 2nd, I was going to be baptized. I was watching TV and I had a dream. A dream that felt so real. Everyone I knew lived in the same house I lived in, and every day there would be a crowd of people walking all around my house, but they weren't people. They were demons. Most of them never bothered me, or spoke to me, or anyone who lived in the house. Most of them never bothered me, spoke to me, or anyone who lived in my house. Until one day, this very pretty lady talked to my mom and dad, and she was super nice, so they invited her to come live at our house. As soon as she walked in, I knew what she really was. I have a loft bed, so underneath my desk and TV, and every night I could hear her humming quietly and just walking around my room. And sometimes when she hummed, it sounded like she was growling. She only walked in my room and only showed her true form when I was alone. One morning, as I hopped out of bed, I saw her in my doorway. Her feet were like birds' feet. Her skin was gray and kind of slimy. She only had the fingers, claws, whatever you want to call them. She had 2 small horns on the top of her head. Her tongue was like a snake's tongue, and her eyes were just 2 black holes. "What do you want?" I demanded. "I hear you're getting baptized tomorrow," she growled. "Yes." "Why?" she asked. And before I could answer, she vanished. Later, we were outside. She came up behind me in human form. Other people were around. I grabbed her arm and she winced me in pain. I looked down and took my hand off her arm and saw that I burned her. After a while, she offered to make my family dinner. While she was making dinner, I tried to explain to everybody that she was a demon. No one ever believed me. So I grabbed her by the hair and placed my hand on her face and showed that I had burned her face with my touch. "You probably just slapped her hand," my dad explained. I gave up trying to show them. Sometimes she would try to bribe me into leaving God. "If you join my side, you can have all the money in the world. God would just make you work for it." Of course, I would deny her offer. Then the day came for me to be baptized. I went to church and I came back and she was in the middle of my room. She looked up at me with those black eyes, and she had a metal cross in her hand. It was burning her in her hand and melting slowly. The next thing she said to me will never leave my mind. "I was waiting for you." Then I woke up. I have no idea what this dream means. Please help me. And I did go through my baptism today, October 2nd, 2011. A couple months ago, my friend's cousin, who's a single mother, bought a new cell phone. After a long day of work, she came home, placed her phone on the counter, and went to watch TV. Her son came over to her and asked if he could play with her new phone. She told him not to call anybody or mess with the text messages, and he agreed. At around 11:20, she was a bit drowsy, so she decided to tuck her son in to go to bed. She walked to his room and saw that he wasn't there. She then ran over to her room to find him sleeping on her bed with the phone in his hand. Relieved, she picked her phone back up from his hand to inspect it. Browsing through it, she noticed only minor changes, such as a new background, banner, etc. But then she opened up her saved pictures. She began deleting the pictures he had taken, until only one new picture remained. When she first saw it, she was in disbelief. It was her son sleeping on her bed. But the picture was taken by somebody else above him. It showed the left half of an elderly woman's face.